Welcome back to the deep dive. So, if you're running any kind of organization today, could be a startup, could be massive, that employee turnover, attrition is just, it's a huge drain. And we're talking capital, knowledge, momentum, all just walking out the door, replacing someone valuable. That can cost what, like 150% of their salary, sometimes more. And historically, HR teams, well, they often treated this like something you just had to deal with, right? Bad weather. You'd wait for that resignation letter, then scramble, damage control. But the sources we're looking at today show this is really changing fast. Artificial intelligence is stepping in. It's shifting retention from this reactive, expensive problem to something predictable, something you can actually strategize around. So today, we're diving into exactly how companies are doing this. We're going to look at the specific techniques they're using, things like minimum covariate patterns and survival analysis. We'll cover the results they're getting, and they are pretty impressive. And of course, we have to talk about the ethics, because using algorithms on people's careers, that needs serious safeguards.
It really is a massive shift for HR. I mean, for ages, HR was seen as, well, administrative, right? Forms, tracking who left. Now, AI is making it strategic. It's giving organizations insights from data they just couldn't process before. And the key word here is proactive. Instead of just counting the cost after someone leaves.
They're seeing it coming.
Exactly. They're identifying who might be thinking of leaving, maybe 6 months out, allows them to actually do something about it.
And it's not just about having more data, is it? It's the kind of data. We're way past just looking at exit interviews. These AI models, they're crunching huge amounts of different HR data points, things that might seem small on their own.
But together they build a picture,
Yeah.
a predictive score.
Yeah, precisely. We're talking deep, structured data sets. Sure, the basics are in their tenure, performance reviews, but also much finer details like internal engagement survey scores, how often someone uses professional development resources, their salary compared to the market. Even things like which managers tend to see higher turnover on their teams.
And the goal isn't just the obvious stuff, like low pay means people leave. Everyone knows that. It's finding that specific, sometimes counterintuitive mix of factors that flags a high probability of departure. Maybe it's, an employee with 3 years tenure, no recent internal moves, and a performance rating that's consistently meets but never exceeds expectations. That particular combination, yeah, that's what the models latch onto.
Okay, so that brings us to the techniques. How does the AI actually find these patterns? You've got this mountain of data. You can't just plug it into a spreadsheet. The sources pointed to two core methods that seem really central. Let's unpack those. First, this idea of minimum covariate patterns, or MCP. How does that work?
MCP is, well, it's kind of the statistical engine driving the prediction. It's not just looking for any correlation. Think of it like a really specialized detector. It hunts for the smallest possible set of data points. Covariates that, when you put them together, give you the strongest signal of flight risk.
Smallest set. Why is that important?
Because it stops the model getting confused by noise. It prevents overfitting, focusing on irrelevant details. So the model might find that for a certain risk profile, maybe only 3 things really matter: who their direct manager is, how long it's been since their last internal move, and maybe a slight drop in how often they log into key company systems. That specific minimal pattern, that's the fingerprint, that tells the system who is statistically most likely to be looking elsewhere.
Okay, so MCP finds the who, based on current data patterns. But knowing who is only part of it, right? To intervene effectively, you really need to know when they might leave. And that's where the second technique comes in: survival analysis.
Exactly. Survival analysis adds that crucial time dimension. It's a technique that's actually borrowed from other fields: medicine, engineering.
Like predicting when a machine part might fail.
Precisely. Or in medicine, predicting patient remission times. In HR, we adapt it to forecast turnover probabilities over a specific time period. So instead of just a flag saying high risk,
It gives you a time frame.
right, it might say, this employee has a 75% probability of leaving between month 34 and month 42 of their employment. Or maybe highest risk period is the 3 months after their big project concludes.
Yeah.
That temporal insight is incredibly valuable. It helps HR plan interventions much more strategically. You know when the risk peaks. Maybe it's just before stock options vest, for example.
Makes the intervention much more targeted, I imagine.
Exponentially more effective, yeah.
Which leads us to the next step: action. Because having the prediction is great, but it doesn't mean anything if HR or the manager doesn't act on it. This is where those AI co-pilots come in. according to the sources.
Absolutely. The co-pilots are the bridge from data to action. They take that risk score, that probability, and translate it into concrete, suggested strategies for the manager or the HR partner.
So give us an example, like Jane in marketing gets flagged.
Okay, so say the model flags Jane, 80% risk of leaving in the next 6 months. And the MCP analysis shows it's linked to uh, high external salary benchmarks for her role and maybe a lack of visible development opportunities recently.
Hmm.
The co-pilot doesn't just flash a warning light. It generates specific suggestions tailored to that data. For Jane, it might suggest initiate mentorship discussion, or schedule a career pathing meeting focused on promotion track, or flag for immediate salary review against new market data.
Ah, okay, so it's prescriptive.
Highly prescriptive. It moves the organization from just knowing there's a risk to having clear, actionable steps to mitigate it, from passive prediction to active intervention.
Okay, that sounds powerful. Let's get into the results then, because this is where it gets really interesting, right? The tangible impact. The sources are quoting some pretty startling numbers. First, that lead time. Predicting risk up to 6 months in advance. That's significant.
It's a huge window for intervention.
And the accuracy. They're saying 85% accuracy. Predicting human behavior that accurately. That's kind of incredible.
It is. It's a testament to how powerful these analytical techniques are when applied to large data sets.
Yeah.
But we should probably pause on that 85% for a moment.
You mean the other 15%?
Yeah, the 15% error margin. It's crucial to understand what that means in practice.
Right. Because if you flag someone who isn't actually a flight risk,
Mm-hmm.
you risk messing things up, don't you? Like you start having conversations about career paths with someone who's perfectly happy and they just get confused, maybe even suspicious. Could backfire?
That's exactly the risk. And it's why the human element is still absolutely critical here. That 15% means roughly 15 out of 100 flagged employees might be false positives. Or maybe their situation changed on its own. So the manager can't just blindly follow the AI's suggestion. The AI flags the priority. It tells the manager where to focus their limited time and energy.
Okay.
But the manager still needs to use their judgment, their empathy. They need to have a real conversation, not just tick a box based on the co-pilot. The AI directs attention. The human handles the interaction.
That makes sense. It augments the manager, doesn't replace them.
Precisely. And when that intervention, guided by the AI but delivered with human skill, works, the impact is huge.
And the sources quantify that impact too. They suggest these targeted interventions can cut overall turnover by as much as 20%.
Yeah, let's make that real. Imagine a company, say, 5,000 employees. Average turnover might be 15% a year. That's 750 people leaving.
Okay.
A 20% reduction means keeping 150 of those people who would have otherwise walked out.
Wow.
To give you about the savings, recruitment costs, training costs, lost productivity during ramp-up.
It's
Millions.
Yeah.
But even more important.
You keep the knowledge, the experience.
Exactly. You retain that intellectual capital, maintain team stability and momentum. It builds a much more resilient organization.
So this isn't some fringe experiment anymore. The sources mention a 2025 HR survey finding that 60% of organizations are already using AI tools for retention.
It's rapidly becoming mainstream. Standard practice or forward-thinking HR departments. And look, the company's getting ahead with these advanced predictive systems. They are genuinely carving out a competitive advantage. In tight labor markets, being the employer who can actually hold on to their best people, that's not just a cost saving, it's a strategic weapon. They aren't just surviving attrition, they're minimizing it to thrive.
Okay, but let's talk about the elephant in the room, the data itself. Performance reviews, tenure, how often someone logs into systems, salary comparisons. This is sensitive stuff, extremely sensitive. Collecting and analyzing it has huge privacy implications, doesn't it? GDPR, CCPA, the compliance hurdles must be significant.
Oh, absolutely. This is probably the most critical piece to get right. Because all the predictive accuracy in the world is useless if you violate trust or break the law. You mentioned GDPR in Europe, CCPA in California. These regulations are strict about how personal data is handled, consent, processing, storage, security. It all has to be buttoned up. And the key technology enabling this, the main safeguard mentioned, is the use of anonymized data lakes.
Anonymized data lakes. Okay, sounds technical. Break that down for us. How does that protect, say, our friend Jane in marketing, while still letting the AI predict her risks?
Right, so think of it as a highly secure, encrypted vault for data. Before the data goes into this lake, all the stuff that directly identifies a person name, employee ID, email, exact location is stripped out. It's replaced with randomized secure tokens. So the AI model works with these tokens.
Oh, okay.
The model could see token XYZ, which represents a person with this combination of tenure, performance pattern, and engagement score, has a high flight risk. It identifies the pattern linked to the token, but not the person directly.
So the model itself isn't seeing Jane Doe is likely to leave.
Correct. Only when the copilot generates that final recommendation for Jane's actual manager is the token potentially linked back to her name. And that final step is usually governed by very strict internal access controls and ethical policies.
Got it. So the predictive engine works on anonymized data, protecting privacy day to day. The re-identification only happens at the point of intervention under controlled circumstances.
Exactly. It's about balancing the predictive power with fundamental privacy rights.
Hmm.
It also helps build trust because employees aren't just being individually monitored in some creepy way.
Which, as you said, would totally undermine the whole thing anyway. If people feel spied on, they'll leave because of the system designed to keep them.
Precisely. And relying on patterns from huge data sets rather than focusing on one individual's file also provides some ethical grounding. It suggests the predictions are based on broad statistical trends, not, a manager's personal bias against someone.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the big picture here? The main takeaway from this deep dive seems pretty clear. The future of keeping your best people is definitely about being proactive, using data, getting ahead of the curve. We're leaving the era of just reacting to resignations behind.
That's the core message.
And looking forward, the sources hint at this tech getting even smarter. Things like integrating real-time feedback, maybe from internal comms channels, and constantly refining those models with more anonymized data, pushing that 85% accuracy even higher.
I think that's inevitable. The models will get better, more nuanced. But ultimately, these tools aren't just about cutting costs, though they certainly do that. They represent a real competitive edge, helping companies hold on to their MVPs, their top talent. That's how they thrive, especially when everyone else is scrambling. It shows a commitment maybe to actually understanding what employees need.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener, something to consider. If AI can tell a company with 85% certainty that you might leave in the next 6 months, how does that change things?
Yeah, how does that knowledge shift the sort of moral contract, the responsibility between the employer and the employee? If they know you're a flight risk, maybe because market pay is shot up and they haven't adjusted your salary, does that knowledge create an obligation for them to act, to try and fix it?
Or should intervention always be something the employee opts into, to respect their autonomy, even if the data says they're unhappy? Mandatory versus invitation-only intervention.
It's a really interesting question to ponder as these AI tools become the norm in HR departments everywhere.